I want to thank everyone for taking time to choose this as an option to spend some time and listen to the stories that will emanate from our first storytellers, and also hopefully yourself to engage in telling your own stories of struggles around human rights, etc. I'll be your facilitator for this session. My name's Jennifer Kelly, and I'm involved with ALHI and have been since about, I think, 2001. And so it's great that I'm able to engage in this conversation in something I'm really passionate about, and I'm sure a lot of you are as well. Just in terms of what human rights are about, or what the purpose and aims of this session, I just want to sort of go through a couple of notes that we've taken from the descriptor that Alvin, I think, put together, and I think very much indicates why we're here and what the issues are around. And I'll read. The trade union movement has sometimes been a leader in the fight for the rights of individual workers, but often it has been merely a follower, pushed to action by social groups, often organized on the basis of gender, ethnicity, racialized identity, or sexual orientation. Efforts to guarantee the human rights of all workers have included both struggles with employers and the state. The right to maternity leave, embodied in the Parcels case, such as Susan will be sharing with us, involved the state as employer and required legal action to assert workers' rights. Aboriginal rights, as demonstrated by Muriel Stanley Venne, has also been an important aspect and has meant the need for struggles in communities with courts and workplaces. Like Canada's First Peoples, workers of colour have faced discrimination from employers and from society as a whole, sometimes including trade unions. But they've also fought back and won important victories. Beryl Scott will share some of her stories around that. Workers who are gay, bisexual, or transgendered have similarly had to fight to get unions to struggle with them for equal civil rights, including benefits for partners and for respect within workplaces. And Judith Moar has joined us to share her stories around that. Temporary foreign workers, denied the possibility of Canadian citizenship by Canadian governments, beholding to employers who want cheap, submissive workers, are especially vulnerable workers because the threat of deportation always hangs over them if they protest such exploitation. But many have risen up nonetheless to demand equal treatment with other workers in Canada, and we're lucky to have Eduardo Basa with us today. The speakers in this session collectively tell the story of how diverse groups of workers have fought for a more inclusive union movement and a more inclusive Canadian society in Alberta. They have demanded that Alberta's government and employers implement practices in line with United Nations and International Labour Organization rules that prohibit unequal treatment based on natural differences among humans rather than on actual qualification to do a particular job. So that's sort of the orientation of what this session will be about. I have here before us, as I said, the various speakers, and I'll just do a very brief overview and a bio for them before they begin to share their stories. So starting with Muriel Stanley Venne. Muriel has been a leader in the Aboriginal and Métis communities of Alberta for over 30 years. She has an abiding belief in the strength and spirit of Indigenous communities, a conviction that is reflected in her long-standing commitment to advancing their status. She has worked as a human rights advocate and a human rights commissioner, later diversifying her focus to better understand and assist her people. Muriel served on the boards of numerous organizations, including the National Aboriginal Achievement Foundation, and is a lifetime member of the Canadian Native Friendship Centre and was founder of the Institute for the Advancement of Aboriginal Women. Her tireless work has helped break down stereotypes, fight racism, and address the obstacles to equality for Aboriginal women, children, and families. She has also been the recipient of the Order of Canada and National Aboriginal Achievement Award for Justice. So thanks. Susan Parcels was raised in a farming community in central Alberta, and after receiving her nursing diploma at Foothills Hospital in 1980, returned to that community to work and raise her family. Throughout her nursing career, Susan has worked in staff nurse positions, management positions, and now works in private practice. During the first 10 years of her nursing career, Susan participated in 3 UNA strike actions, was deleted through organizational restructuring, which is an interesting phrase, from management positions twice, gave birth to 2 children, and with blind faith challenged the system's belief about women in the labor force having babies. Susan considers these 10 years her baptism by fire. As a registered nurse and group psychotherapist, Susan now works alongside her husband in private practice, providing contracted services for the treatment of mental health clients and domestic violence victims and offenders. So welcome, Susan. Beryl Scott. Beryl is a registered nurse. She received her early childhood schooling in Jamaica, finished high school in England. Beryl believes in social justice and is an unwavering advocate of human rights for all. She was a founding member of the AFL Workers of Colour and Aboriginal Committee. She retired from the board of UNA October 2011 after serving more than 14 years. She's been elected recently to the board of directors for Canadian Multicultural Education Foundation, having stepped down as chair of the Centre for Race and Culture, having served 6 years. She's a member at large for the Alberta Federation of Union Retirees. She will continue to serve in a capacity of facilitator, teaching about pre-retirement and retirement seminars. She's also, as an aside, proud of her Maroon tribe of Jamaica and maintains her heritage of being a warrior for this proud group of people, and as Jamaicans say, out of many, one people. Okay, so welcome, Beryl. And then we have Judith. Judith's a registered nurse, 35 years employed. She was employed at the Alberta Health Services for some length of time. Her union affiliation since 1972 was first with CUPE, then with Manitoba Nurses Union, Staff Nurses Association, United Nurses of Alberta, and she has held many executive positions from ward rep right the way through to VP. She's also on the provincial executive board of UNA for 8 years. And also she's on the AFL Provincial Council for several years. She's a past chair and member of the AFL Pride and Solidarity Committee. Welcome, Judith. And then we have as our final person on our committee, oh my gosh, that's work. I sit in a lot of committees. Our circle, sorry, is Eduardo Basa Jr. And Eduardo was born in Manila, Philippines. He's been very brave and given his age, 1975. One of 3 children, both parents and children worked in the retail meat industry. This was not unusual, as this was the 3rd generation of meat cutters. He studied computer science as his post-secondary education. Eduardo married Odessa Orneda on May the 6th, 2000. Eduardo decided to make an incredible sacrifice by leaving his home country, his wife and friends and family to come to Alberta in 2008 as a temporary foreign worker. He started working at Cargill Meat Solutions in High River, Alberta on June the 2nd, 2008. Eduardo was surprised to have a union representative from UFCW Local 1118 meet him at the airport when he arrived in Calgary. Eduardo has always been interested and acted as an advocate for workers of all walks of life and became a shop steward in September 2009. He accepted the responsibility of a table officer for the High River unit in 2010. Eduardo has been subsequently elected as a vice president of the UFCW Local 1118 Executive Board. Eduardo has proven his commitment to making life better for his co-workers by being an active member of the Safety Committee, the Ergonomics Committee, the Grievance Committee, and the Diversity Committee. So welcome. Okay. So I'll just do a very quick synopsis of how the process will work, because I've talked more than I like to talk. The way it will work is that these are storytellers, these folks who are here to share their stories, and you also have the potential, depending on time, to be storytellers. So the way it will work is that the first storytellers will start with their stories, and then we'll move to you as the audience to share your stories. Because in theme, with the overall emphasis in the conference of oral histories, this is what we would like to gather and garner through being recorded, which brings me to two more points. The first of which is that we also are very lucky to have with us, and I only look on my paper because I'm always getting his name wrong, and it really is terrible, Malambo Munga, and I hope I pronounced it right, Malambo? Yeah, which means I mispronounced it. And he is the youth element on the panel, because what he will do is, after we've all spoken and after you as the second storytellers have all spoken, he will comment on what it is that he's observed, any experiences that he may want to share with us. Because in fact, Malambo, would you like to just share a tiny bit about yourself, where you're from, etc.?
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to participate in the circle. I am originally from Zambia. I am a couple of months old in Canada. I came in September, last September. And I met Jenny through a group called Next Up. It's a leadership development program for young people interested in social and environmental justice work in Edmonton. So when Jennifer asked me to participate, I wasn't really certain, because I really do not have, a groundbreaking story to share, like the panelists or the other storytellers. So really, I would only add a youth perspective and maybe even share some of my own experiences, as somebody from Zambia and the larger global South. So that's pretty much it. I work for the Edmonton Chamber of Voluntary Organizations, and my background has always been in community development work, but also in working with government institutions on policy issues that are relevant, to the community development agenda in Zambia. So this is my first job in Edmonton, and maybe people should be a little bit patient if my perspective is a little bit biased to the Zambian scenario, because I am a new Canadian and I'm still learning about the country.
Thanks very much, Malambo. And just one more point that we wanted to emphasize was around consent. You've probably been in a number of the story circles, so you know how it works. If there's anyone new who hasn't given permission, we will be getting some forms. Please come and see me at the end just to say, yes, you can in fact be recorded and we can use that recording. Or if you don't want to be recorded, please make sure you let us know. Also, as you speak as the second storytellers, please give us your names as well, just so as we can be polite in terms of, also tracing you. It's a matter of surveillance, so we know your names. Okay, so I think it's about time that we start. So first person we're going to start with, speaking for 5 minutes each, is Muriel.
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm pleased to be here. I think I'm used to circles, so it's fine. I'm breaking the circle, but I hope that I'll be heard better. I prepared a whole speech, but I promise you I'm just going to tell the stories in the speech. First of all, and thank you to the organizers. I'm very pleased to be here and appreciate the opportunity to talk. I want to tell you that I am born in Alberta. I'm at Whitford. I grew up at Whitford. I was born in Lamont Hospital with my twin brother, Wesley. And I wanted to mention that we were born on December the 12th, 1937. I ran in the last election in Edmonton Southwest, and I felt that one of the reasons I ran was I represented a demographic that needed to be represented. So unfortunately I didn't win. But I don't give up, because it's the 5th time that I've run as a new Democrat in the province. So you're gonna have some. I come from a family, a big family of 7 brothers and 2 sisters, 3 including me. My sister worked for the city of Edmonton for 30 years and is retired. My 2 brothers are, 2 are steel workers, and my brother Harold was an asbestos worker who has died, and my first husband, Albert Van, who just passed away last week. His memorial was held on Monday. I suppose you're wondering why they've asked me as a non-union member to speak here today. I was hired as the Director of Job Opportunities and Placement for the Métis Association of Alberta. And one of the things that happened was that Stan Daniels was the president. And for all you people that don't know the history of the Métis people, I can explain to you later. Anyhow, we were just starting out, and I was the department head. I mean, it was just me. Stan couldn't make it, and I was asked to speak at the Alberta Federation of Labor conference. So I spoke. I looked at their resolutions, and I said, multiply these resolutions 100 times, and you'll get an idea of the predicament that the Indigenous people in this province face, Métis and First Nations. And I was privileged to be in the circle where Stan Daniels, Harold Cardinal, and I were negotiating with Syncrude. The thing about Syncrude is really weird. Mike Woodward, who was born in Anzac, went for a job, and they turned him down. But not giving up, he applied a couple of weeks later, told me he was Mexican, and he got a job right away. I've been involved as Director of Native Outreach, which was the Native Employment Program in that era, when we were trying to get our people jobs and some realization that they were going into area that belonged to the Aboriginal, the Indigenous people of this country. And in one session, which involved Saskatchewan, held in northern Saskatchewan, I was appalled to hear one union guy get up and say, "No goddamn Indian's gonna take my job." And of course I objected. And then an old fellow came beside me and said, "You'd be such a nice one. You'd be so nice if you got that chip off your shoulder." And I told him that I'd get the chip off my shoulder when something was done to get our people work. So it's been a rough road. It's been a rough road, I'll tell you. As the Director of Native Outreach, the only way we could get our people on the job was to go through the laborers union. They had to take 2 weeks training, mostly on safety, and they were guaranteed work. They weren't going to get hired any other way. I sat on the apprenticeship board for 6 years, so I know every trade in this province. And for 2 terms, I was appointed by the government, and so was viewed with quite a bit of suspicion, thinking, well, she's just another government appointee. But I got told in one of the electrical PACs, anybody knows construction trade, I had indicated that I was very unhappy about the way things were going, and told him what the apprenticeship board was planning. And the electrical guy said to me, "You have more balls than any man I know." So you can imagine in those days, to be a woman on anything was an accomplishment. And if they thought they were getting a token woman, they were damn wrong. I wanted to quickly give credit where credit is due. I don't know if any of you know, or more, some of you know, that the International Labour Organization was the prime body that brought forward the concern about the indigenous people in the world. And they need to be given the credit. I have just brought a summary and I want to read it to you. Convention 169 of the International Labour Organization the ILO was the first international body to take action on indigenous issues. Since its creation in 1919, the ILO has defended the social and economic rights of groups whose customs, traditions, institutions, or language set them apart from other sections of national communities. ILO Conventions 107 and 169 are the only legal instruments adopted by the international community specifically concerning indigenous and tribal peoples. I think that, I believe, and as stated here, if that convention wasn't done, then the indigenous people in this world would not have access to the United Nations and to all the subsequent work done by the ILO. So I want to give them credit, and I want you to know that that's where the credit belongs. Now, putting it into practice is another whole area, but I think if we start off like that, I got to tell you this, and I don't know if there's anybody here who's Ukrainian, but Neil Reimer, before he got a chance to tell me a story, and he told me that he was in Lac-La-Biche. For anybody in Alberta, you know where Lac-La-Biche is, and there's a lot of Métis people, First Nations people, and they were at this political meeting, and Henry Thomaschuk was running for the NDP. And they were going on about how the white man was doing this, and the white man was doing this, and they were all mad at the white man. And Henry stood there and said, well, I'm Ukrainian. I thought that was an incredible story that Neil told me about what happened. And of course, in those days, a lot of people, the pioneers of this country and the Aboriginal people were discriminated against. You're here on Treaty 6 land, by the way. This is Treaty 6 land, which is this whole area, and it belonged to them. I just wanted to close with one quick statement. I was at the memorial to the injured workers, not this year, but the year before, and got a chance to say a few words. And I want to say that I believe that the right to go to work and come home safely is a human right. That is everyone's human right, to have that ability and the safety, and also the damages done by the work environment. When I said my asbestos worker brother and first husband died, that was because they didn't know what they were doing. The International knew, but somehow that didn't get down to the unions about protection. I mean, they did things with asbestos that they were never told there was any danger. And I wanted to say finally that I believe human rights is pure. Like, you can't have a little bit of human rights and a lot of human rights for somebody and a little bit for somebody else. I believe that human rights belongs to every human being, and nobody gives you your rights. You have them by being born a human being.
Hi, this is Parcels, and My story, as it relates to human rights, I don't consider myself much of a fighter, and it does take quite a bit to offend me. And so I knew that working as a nurse in 1989, when I was pregnant with my second child, when I went to arrange my leave of absence, my maternity leave, and they presented me with, in short, they presented me with a bill for $718 and some odd cents. And it was to prepay 100% of the premiums for my benefits for the 15 weeks that I would be on maternity leave. And I was offended. I knew something was wrong. It didn't feel right. I had a child while working in a management position 4 years earlier and hadn't prepaid any benefits. And I guess that was just one of the perks of being out of scope that nobody tells you was a perk, is that your benefits will be carried for the duration of your maternity leave and welcome back. When you come back, you just start like nothing happened. But I had been in and out of management positions, liked the job, the skills that were required, liked my job out of management, loved my job in scope, the skills that were required. And so when it came time to go on my second maternity leave, and I had been in scope and I was presented with this bill, it felt really wrong. I wasn't going on vacation. I wasn't taking a leave of absence. I wasn't going back to school. I was having a child, and I thought that deserved a little more respect than being handed a bill I even said to them, well, can I arrange, because I didn't have the $800 back then, that's a lot of money. And I said, can we arrange to pay it monthly? No, you can't. It's all or nothing. And that didn't sit well either. And I said, well, can I arrange then just to have my Blue Cross? I'll pay it, because we should have that for our family for the time that I'm off for the 15 weeks. Nope, you can't take anything out of the package. So I thought, okay, this isn't right either, but really offended me is that I'm standing there 8 months pregnant, and I thought, this is a big deal. Having babies is a big deal, and it's important, and we should celebrate this, and I should at least have the same rights as someone who's going off on for a sick leave for a short period of time and coming back. And in that case, you would your benefits would be paid. It would be, even so, I think there's a 25%. You would pay 25% of your premiums if you were going off on sick leave instead of 100%. So I went home and I talked to my husband, who was taking his courses at the University of Calgary at the time, and he was at the time going through a constitutional law course with the professor Ted Morton. And yes, Ted Morton, who was bringing forward to the students the Supreme Court decisions, and talking about how Supreme Court decisions affected social policy, and giving them these options to write papers on. And one of these Supreme Court decisions in I believe it was '88 was the Brooks versus Safeway decision, Manitoba, Susan Brooks versus Canada Safeway. And in that case, that was taken all the way through the Manitoba justice system, all the way up. She went to the Supreme Court with it. And that case overturned a previous Supreme Court case about, I believe it was 10 years earlier, about Bliss versus, don't know who. Anyway, Bliss, it said that pregnancy, discrimination based on pregnancy was not sexual discrimination. And then so when Brooks versus Safeway went all the way to the Supreme Court, it was obviously overturned, and they said, oh, grievous error, pregnancy is sexual, and it is discrimination. And so that changed the course of, I didn't know it, but he knew it at the time, and he said, sounds a little like sexual discrimination because of the Brooks decision. So I phoned the Human Rights Commission, and at that moment, everything changed. And it was 3 years of hell. It was 3 years of and I say that lovingly because things did come out of it, but it was very difficult. They paid without prejudice. The hospital paid my benefits with a little note at the bottom that said, if they overturn this decision or if they dismiss you, you're giving us back the $718. So I said, yeah, okay, whatever. And I wrote back defiantly, no, I'm not. Get it from me. And then they did. To the point where I even received a letter from my own lawyer at the Human Rights Commission saying, you know what, if you don't kind of toe the line, you're going to have to get other legal representation to represent your wishes, and we'll have lawyers representing our wishes. And I said, no, it's fine. They can come after me for the $718 if they want. But 3 years later, I think they forgot because I didn't get a bill, and I didn't get a bill because I won part of that, right? The inquiry, the Board of Inquiry took about 3 years. Rachel was 3 years old when it ended. And even then it didn't really end because insurance companies don't lay down gracefully. They find ways of not incorporating the sub-plan, which was put in place to top up the income for the portion of the maternity leave that would be deemed medically necessary. So it does go on and on and on a bit. But they didn't give me a bill for the $200 that would have been what they overpaid me in my benefits. So, my story, it was difficult because every time I turned around, I saw my name in the newspaper and saw there, even though I did have some support, my union, I had to take both the union and the Alberta Hospital Association. I had to name them in the complaint, both because they were party to the collective agreement that was, in its true sense, discriminatory because of not recognizing that pregnant women have a medically necessitated portion of their leave under which they should be treated the same as anyone else off on a health-related leave. But then, editorials on the news like Bob Layton. Drive down the road and Bob Layton's talking about me. And he's talking about me like I'm going to cost the taxpayer, you know how he talks, right? Like, what do you think? Like I'm going to cost the taxpayer millions and millions of dollars. Well, actually, I was identified as the $25 million woman because I was going to cost the Alberta taxpayers $25 million. Well, they managed to get that down with sub-plans, so now I'm only the $3 million woman. I think that's what it cost. However, I've heard that there have been boondoggles in the government that have been way more than $3 million. So this, I think, is a good investment, paying for our working women that are that are having babies, that have a collective agreement or a benefits package that should include them, and now it does. So hopefully it's working out better for women of childbearing years.
Okay, next person, Beryl.
Okay, I think I see some faces in here that knows me that I'm a feisty little wretch that you don't want to play around with. As Jennifer has mentioned before, I am from the Maroon tribe of Jamaica. My forefathers were ones that did not lay down for the Spanish or the French. They helped the British to drive them out of our land, and as such, we became independent before the rest of Jamaica was. So we had our own land, we had everything that was needed for the work that we did. And one thing that my grandmother, who again, I do favor a lot, had said to me when I decided at 14 that I was wanting to go to England to go to school. She said to me, there are two things you're going to remember. I have never left this island, but you will never know when I'll be there. So you had better toe the line and act like a Maroon and a Jamaican who is proud. Do not lay down if you're correct. You will stand tall and you will fight. And I have done so ever since. She's since passed away, but she's still very much on my shoulder that gives me a little dig every so often if I want to waver, to say, get with the program. And I am with the program. The stories are many that as an immigrant and a Black woman, you notice I say Black, I don't say colored because I'm not colored. I am Black and I am Jamaican. Yes, I am a naturalized Canadian, but I'm still a Jamaican. But it would take forever to tell you the stories that goes on out there. And one place I thought that I would be safe and that I would be taken care of was within a union movement. That is not always the fact. That does not always happen. It's, you're too sensitive. You're too crusty. Don't even go there, I will say. And the first thing that I met when I went to England is that in England they tell you as they see it. They don't like you, they're going to tell you. They're not going to pussyfoot around it, and they're not going to be covertly trading anything. They're going to say it to your face. So you know where you stand. My first night I got into Canada as a landed immigrant, I had already had a job at the McMaster University Hospital in Hamilton, Ontario, as a registered nurse, registered certified midwife. I went to the immigration as they directed me to, and he handed me a sheet. And as I was looking through it, you know what it said? Beryl Linda Brown Scott, Nurses Aid. And I says, excuse me? And he said, well, that's what we see a Black person coming in here saying they're nurses as, they're nurses aid. I says, no, I'm not. I said, I have my papers from Canada House in England that has received all the information on me, and you can have them. I have them right here in my purse. I handed it over to him. He looked at it and he says, can I see your passport again? I says, why? I want to make sure I'm talking to the same person, that you look like the picture that's in your passport. And at that time I counted to 10 and I did it audibly so he could hear me doing it. And I said to him, sir, I was brought up to respect my elders, but right now I do not respect you. Please process my papers correctly and let me out of here. I looked up and I could see my sister and my brother and my sister-in-law standing looking at me, and I could see my brother, who happened to be a lawyer, looking at me and going, and I'm going, meaning don't interfere, I'll take care of it myself. Eventually he changed it, but he crossed out nurses aid and he put RNA, and I'm not sure if there's anybody here from Ontario that knows that RNA stands for Registered Nursing Attendant. I looked at him and again I said, you know something, you're really, and I was about to use a rude word, and I remembered that little 88-year-old lady sitting on my shoulder saying, be nice. So I was nice, and it was changed. But I'm thinking, oh my God, what have I come into? This is supposed to be a multicultural country. What have I come into? Well, I got out of there and I told my brother what had happened, and he said, not acceptable, we'll deal with it. I said, I do not want you to interfere. This is my fight. I will fight it. So that's just one of the first things that happened in my time of coming into Canada. Another thing that I don't know you knew, that I was asked to provide $10,000 in England to the Canadian government that I didn't receive back until I was here for 5 years, because they wanted to make sure that I was not going to be a burden on Canadian taxpayers, even though I had a job that I came in on the Sunday night and I was at work the Monday morning. But that's my introduction to Canadian life. There are other issues that went on that nobody could understand or understood why I had the degrees I had, because they didn't think that Black people had it. And they made it as a joke. They said, oh, we're just funny. No, it's not funny to me, don't say that. So when I came to Alberta, I'd heard about United Nurses of Alberta. I'd heard what a strong union they were. And my first day in orientation, we went on strike that night. And I had never met the girls that I would be working with. And my brother looked at me and he says, "You're not staying home. You're gonna get to know the people you're working with. You're going on that picket line." So he drove me in from St. Albert to Edmonton General Hospital. And I met the girls I work with. And to a fault, many of them were fantastic. Some weren't. Some were not accepting of me because they felt that one of the things they used to say is, "She's gonna ask us, what are you doing? That's not right." Like they made assumptions without actually knowing me. And of course, being the crusty person as they said I was, I decided I would give them a little bit of their own medicine. So when they said something that I disagreed with, I would smile and I'd walk away and not say a word, and that would really shake them up. And I even had a manager who came in when we came back off the strike and said, "Oh, I haven't met Nurse Scott. When she comes this morning, can somebody send her down to me?" I'm standing right there. One of the girls that I had met on strike said to her, "Beryl, meet." And she says, "I want Nurse Scott when she comes to come to my office." And I can still remember Helen McDonald, who's Scottish, looked at her and says, "Beryl is standing beside you. And yes, she's black." And for her to say that, I was the first black nurse that was ever hired at the Edmonton General Hospital in obstetrics. And she was so shocked, she didn't know where to put her head, and I decided I was going to make it easy for her. I was going to keep a straight face and meet with her, so I did. But one of the things, just because we have such a short period of time, that I need to mention here is unions do not understand that they have immigrants working for them. They sometimes can be the worst enemy for an immigrant nurse, because they'll say to you, "Oh, it doesn't mean anything. Are you sure people are discriminating against you? Are you sure you're not just being silly and thinking that somebody does say something that is not right?" And then there was an annual general meeting where, as workers of color and Aboriginal workers, because we sometimes have the same issues, we got together and decided to be a Band-Aid for each other. We're going to have somebody that we can cling to, somebody we can share our thoughts with. And one thing we had requested in our resolutions was that we have some space given to us, that we could meet and talk to each other on our lunch break. It's not taking anything away from anyone. And I was shocked because I thought I had friends amongst our union. And it's very painful for me even now. One nurse who was a friend, I thought she was a friend, she went to the mic and she said, "Beryl, I love you dearly, but until a 300-pound, blonde, blue-eyed, white Anglo-Saxon is given a room to meet, I'll be damned if any of you have a room." Judy's right here. She was there at that time as well. I wanted to cry. I wanted to rip her guts out. And there was one CLC rep there who came over to me and he held me and he said, "Do not respond. Do not." And what really hurt was that my leader stood there and did not stop that behavior at the mic. She stood there. There were other people who got to that mic and spoke derogatory about us. Nothing was said or done. As a black nurse in Alberta, you have to be 10 times better than a white nurse to be accepted. United Nurses is over 26,000 strong. And any nurse in here can tell you, how many minorities do you see in any role there? Please tell me. Can you put your hand up if you've seen one since I left last year? Have you seen?
Male nurses.
Beg your pardon?
Male nurses.
Male nurses as well. Please tell me. Because what has happened is we're told nurses do not practice racism. Nurses are not racist. But you know what? We all have some biases. And we all have to respect the people that we're there to protect and that we say we're doing. And for that reason, when I resigned from the Board of United Nurses last year, I asked for a meeting to talk to them about what has gone on in the past 32 years since I sat on the Board of United Nurses, sat as a member of United Nurses, over 14 years as a board member, and as the only Black person or worker of color that you could see there. And I told them what the issues were. And I got asked by someone, "Are you sure you're not imagining it?" This is 2011 that I spoke that to them. At that time, I represented the workers of color and Aboriginal workers. And one of our executive officer at a meeting, and I think there were some members in here that was at that meeting, we were getting ready for biennium. And when she came for us to give reports, she went, "And this is the woke group." Would you take offense at that? I would, and I did. So I think as trade unions here, we need to stop and think how we represent the people around us. We need to show the face that you accept the rest of the world to see, that you show it to the people you represent. And thank you.
I think you just don't.
So can you hear me? Good, because I'm a soft talker. I'm Judith Moar. I'm a lesbian. I've been out for 20 years. I'll just tell you a little bit about that because it all rolls into one. 20 years ago, I left a marriage because I couldn't be heterosexual. I couldn't be with my husband, so our marriage split, and we're still friends. For the first 10 years that I was out, I wasn't really political. I was active in my union, but I wasn't a gay rights activist or whatever you want to call it. That wasn't until I went to AFL labor school because my local sponsor to go, and I found out that there was a gay caucus, and so not a lot of people knew that I was a lesbian. So we talked, and I went to the caucus. And in that room, we used the same room that a group that had been having one of the classes used. And so during the meeting, there was this woman who came in the room, she's like this, going to get her purse and stuff. And I thought, oh, whatever, I knew her, she was kind of wacko anyways. Well, then we went for supper, and there was a group of us UNA people sat at the table. And so another nurse, a member from Lethbridge, said to this woman who had been in the room, "Well, what was it like being in the room with them?" And then she went on, I'd never really heard a lot of homophobic stuff, because a lot of people didn't even know I was out, like just my friends and stuff. But the homophobic stuff that came out of this woman's mouth, I was just shocked. I couldn't. And actually the woman beside me, she knew I was a lesbian and she was embarrassed. She was the one that came and got her stuff out of the room. So I decided, just let it go. Well, the next day I was in my class and they said, "How was your evening?" So I started blathering and saying, "This is what happened." Well, next thing I knew, I was meeting with the leader. There was an ombudsman or ombuds people. So the facilitator of my meeting group hauled me out, and I had to go meet with the ombudsman. So I told him what had happened. Well, then the shit hit the fan. There was Mike Desitel, he was the CLC rep at the time. He went up, this was I think it was the third morning, he went up and he tore everybody I knew when Like, what are we here for? Like, we're here to support our brothers and sisters, and that woman, I don't think that spewed out the homophobic comments. I don't think she even realized what she had done, but I think she did by the end of the conference. Anyway, so I thought there might be something to this. You know, I'd been wasn't known to sit still, and if I got a cause, so I went to the AFL. They had their biennium that year. It was in 2003. It was in Calgary, and all the other equity groups had a caucus, but the gay caucus, there was nothing. I thought maybe we'd meet up and go in my car or something. Anyways, it went by the name of Barb Ames. A lot of people probably know Barb. She stood up and said that this group needs a room, so we did. And from then on, it just everything rolled out for me. I thought, well, if I'm going to do anything about this, you know, especially in UNA, I thought, am I the only one? I thought, well, no, I knew that. So there was a seat on the UNA board that was vacant. So I thought, well, I ran and I won. And so that started my journey on the UNA board. Beryl and I, we became quite good friends by then. We decided, well, I was asked if I would sit on the AFL's working group for GLBT. And that was fine. I thought I'll get funding, and Beryl and I were elected to the council as VPs. Well, my union would not support us because it was a working group, and because Beryl and I were council, we weren't funded. Because we weren't from UNA, we were from a committee. And that went on for a while. But Beryl had said one of the struggles is with her own union, and my struggle was with my union. Because the other unions like UFCW and QP, they all had caucuses, GLBT caucuses, but UNA, we couldn't even barely get a caucus room at our AGMs. I don't know how much time I have left. I don't want to take up too much.
I was drifting. I was so interested in your story.
Oh, well, anyways, things were like always at the board meetings. We would be, you know, the last ones to speak, and we almost had to beg to get like funding for Pride. And then one year, I think it was about maybe 4 years ago, because I'd always been in the Pride Parade, and we went in with UFCW and our committee, and we were in Calgary, but there was never anybody from the UNA. I can't say for the other unions because I was mostly interested with UNA. So one year Heather said that her and Jane would be in the parade. That's Heather Smith and Jane Sustrick, the president and the second vice president. Heather couldn't be there. I think something happened with her dad. But Jane was there. So I thought things were looking up. But it still was a struggle. Like they gave us money, you know, for Pride, but it was still like we were, I don't know, we'd be at the AFL council meetings because by then we were sponsored. Well, can you get some water?
Sure, listen.
And one of the, I think the questions we were to share was, what was my crowning, you know, what was the, you know, when I thought things were doing well. I used to be a pain in the ass at AGMs and any kind of president's meeting because I would get up there and say, come on to the caucus, because nobody would come. And I would say, well, there's three there. I said, there's me, myself, and I. And to this day, there's been some allies come to our caucuses, but as Beryl said, I didn't rerun for my position on the UNA board this last October, so I also let the AFL position go because I was the chair of the committee, and I thought, you know, I'm tired, and I got some other stuff to do. I had recently married as well. The thing that I thought was the neatest thing, because like I was always there, and I thought I'm not doing nothing. I'm not doing anything. But I thought I probably did, because I often told them, you know, I'm here. You got to look at me. Like I didn't come in where, you know, like a diesel dyke, you know, on a motorcycle and with a cap turned backwards and stuff. But there was on negotiations or demand setting 2009, I had put in a proposal that gender expression and gender identity be included in the non-discrimination clause of the collective agreement. And I wasn't there because I was off that year of 2009 having new knees and all kinds of stuff. But anyways, things were shortlisted because, you know, we didn't think we were going to get much. And this proposal, through the help of my friends from Local 115, Local 301, Local 196, Local 1, Local 183, they debated that. And the only reason it was shortlisted is because the stuff on the top was stuff that was really, they said was really needed, but that had got that far. So I thought, well, maybe the stuff I've done has helped. And I just hope there's somebody else to carry on the, you know, the battle. I don't know because I'm not there. But anyways, I really thank you for letting me speak and
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, good. So my name again is Eduardo, and I'm gonna apologize. I'll be exceeding 5 minutes.
You can blame it.
So I'm gonna tell you a short story titled "Breaking the Chain of X, Y, Z," which X is slavery, Y is racism, and Z is discrimination. Year 2006, top management of Cargill, Olimel, and Maple Leaf talked to UFCW Local 1118 that they're planning to get temporary foreign workers from Mexico and Philippines. The company's initial plan is to bring in TFWs from these countries and send them back home after 2 years of service. This is which is a form of exploitation and falls under the modern day slavery strategy. So UFCW Local 1118 firm response is, no, we won't agree with you. We will not be part of modern day slavery. So negotiations continued regarding the matter. At first it was a battle, then it turned out to be a war. Then to end the war, UFCW Local 1118 said, okay, we will agree if and only if the following conditions will be met. Number one, these companies will give a chance to temporary foreign workers to become or have an equal opportunity to become permanent resident in Canada under AINP. Number two, will provide housing for the TFWs. This housing will be offered if the worker don't have any place to stay. This will be temporary or short term or for long term. So number three, these companies will recognize 100% of experience towards pay progression for temporary foreign workers. So there are certain experiences, 3 years experience, so that you can be qualified. So documentations must be submitted to the company and to the union. So number four, if the TFWs will have the same right under the same collective agreement. Once an employee of TFW entered Cargill, the regular employee and the TFW will have the same right under one collective agreement. So number five is, if ever TFW fail the ESL or the English as secondary language, the company will provide schooling for them so that they can pass ESL and to be interviewed by the government for AINP. So after a series of negotiations, these companies agreed with UFCW 1118. And Cargill, Olimel, Maple Leaf brought in workers from Mexico, Philippines, and some are from, I have one from Central America actually, who is now already a permanent resident here in Canada. So total of TFWs from 2006 to 2012 is 1,545 for the 3 plants. So 50% of them already got their permanent resident status. 23% is on process. 23% is on process, and 27% decided, some of them decided to go back home to their country and look for another job or here in Canada. So these numbers represent the ladderized success of UFCW Local 1118 for the past 6 years for temporary foreign workers program. The engagement of the union plays a vital role, because if UFCW is not there, the check and balance will not be, the company will just say, hey, the union will forget this one after 1 year, 2 years. So check and balance is always there. So UFCW always plays a vital role. So connecting it to history, as we all know, traditional slavery and modern day slavery is not different. It is still slavery. Wherever you put it, it's the same old stuff, it's exploitation. In order to break the chain of X, Y, and Z, we have to say no. No. Say no to slavery, say no to exploitation. Temporary foreign workers have fears. Fears of losing their jobs, fear of deportation, fear of culture change, fear of change, actually. So they're afraid to talk. They'd rather keep it to themselves even though the companies are doing the X, Y, and Z thing. Fear is the only word that can holistically define slavery. That's based on my dictionary. You cannot Google it. It's my dictionary. Yeah. And there's no such thing as Eduardo dictionary. So, how can we stop fear? The key and the answer is education. Educate our members whether he's a TFW or not. And only education can prevent slavery. It's like bullying. Bullying, it can only happen if you allow it. If you say, okay, bully me, it's okay. You allowed it. If we don't allow it, it will not happen. So we have to say no. This is wrong. I have my rights as a worker and as a human being. You have to tell them that, because sometimes management don't know that. Yeah, it's just work. We pay you. We don't care. Are you a dog? No. Are you a machine? They don't care. As long as you do your job, we pay you. It's company's perspective. All about money. So, between 1912 to 2012, a lot of labor unions and workers fought hard and said no to X, Y, Z. And it's true, because a lot of us are fighting for the X, Y, Z to be gone. And it will not be gone. We can just put something. So, and by passing it to the next generation, and the next generation will pass it to the next generation, will further solidify the foundation of the wall that can block X, Y, Z. That's what I mean. That's what I mean by not eliminating it. We cannot eliminate it. We will just put a wall, because it's always there. Slavery is always there. They only define it different. Again, company's perspective, different way of definition. So the TFW program is no different from our brothers and sisters who came to Canada 100 years ago. They come to Canada to work in order to survive and make life easier for their families. Being far away from your family is a hard task. It's a sacrifice that they or we have to make in order to survive. Last 2 nights ago, we watched the concert Maria Dunn and Friends. And there's a song about soldiers who left their families to go to war. It's not the war that they are fighting. It's not what the country asked them to do, but it's the food to be put on the table. They went to war for the families to survive hunger, which is very similar to the DFW program. So, and last night, we watched Bread and Roses. I'll stick with the movies first, okay? It's easier. Brothers and Roses, the movie showed that the problem is in the workplace, doesn't end in the workplace. It affects every one of us. It affects the workers. It affects the public. It affects our families. It's very clear in Brothers and Roses. That's what happened. Brothers and sisters, the fight of X, Y, Z is a never-ending fight. And this is a challenge to us and for the generations to come. I cannot fight it by myself. We cannot fight it alone. But we can fight it as a whole. So, temporary foreign workers are not only fighting for the wages or the status. Temporary foreign workers are fighting for respect. Let's say no to slavery, say no to racism, say no to discrimination. Brothers and sisters, we all live under the same sun. We all bleed red, and if we cannot eliminate X, Y, Z, but we can build a wall to stop it. So in behalf of all BFWs all over Alberta, we would like to say thank you, ALHI and AFL.
Well, we started late, so I'm going to take it upon myself that we maybe have a few minutes more, James. Is that correct?
We already taken this.
Oh, have we? Okay, so we'll take 5 more minutes. Does anyone just want to comment from the audience? Is there anyone who has, there's one? Oh, it's quite a few actually.
I'd like to say I congratulate you all and thank you for your courage to stand up and share your stories today. Yes.
My name is Jason Devine. I know we're short of time, so I won't go into a whole detail, but I'm also, besides a history student, I'm also a member of Anti-Racist Action Calgary. And one of the themes I think we need to take away from here is that those of us of Anglo heritage do have privilege that we don't always see at all times. And the fight against racism has to be both inside the union and outside the union. And there's lots more I could say on that, but I think we should all take that home, that sometimes home isn't always the safest place, and we have to continue to work with that. So let's be proud of unions, let's be happy about that, but let's not idealize it, and let's not look with rose-tinted glasses. So, thank you.
I wanted to thank the people who have made some remarks that the unions need to take more care about their members that come from another country, or that have a different color, or are in any way different, so-called different. Maybe we're the ones that are different. Yes. But anyways, I think a little bit of self-criticism is good for us.
One last comment and then we'll ask
Yeah, Radcliffe and me, postal workers. You know, for me, it's been a struggle within the union movement itself. I've had my own issues internally that sometimes can be disturbing, and I'll just go through the two incidences really briefly. 2002, I was at the CLC conference, just done a speech about 9/11 because that had just taken place the year before. Came outside and was called a effing terrorist, and there was a guy in a truck, and we're at the CLC conference, so all these people hear this, and we sort of surrounded the truck and made sure it didn't go anywhere. The person that was in the truck, plus the helper, totally freaked out, didn't realize what really had happened. And then you think, 9 years later, I'm at a union function, and you would think things would get better. So I'm at a union function. I'm not going to say which one, but there I was. I went to shake a member's hand, and instead of him putting his hand out to shake my hand, he comes up and he grabs my beard and yanked it so hard. That split second, I had a second where it was either somebody was going to be in the hospital or I had to restrain myself. So, I hope somewhere, somehow, someday, somebody or some movement or something takes also into the historical aspect of the struggle that people have had, all people have had within the union movement, and records that history, because there are problems there. And we can't just put icing on the cake and say all history is great, because for some of it, it has not been great. And that was only two things. So, yeah, thank you.
very much. I want to thank everyone, and I want to ask Colombo, do you want to make some comments?
Thank you very much for sharing your story. It's really inspiring for various reasons. I mean, what more can I add except to note the fact that all the stories that have been shared today have one common theme, that there are many ways in which the structural barriers that minorities and other undesirable people face in our society, and unfortunately those are also replicated in various institutions, including our unions. Like you mentioned, unions, have played a significant role in bringing about the various positive changes, particularly in the human rights context, in promoting and fulfilling human rights and so forth. But unfortunately, they've also been an arena where denials to the attainment of, human rights, particularly those, to all workers, have not been attained. So the plight of young people or youthful people right now is, interesting. Various statistics and studies will show you that the global arena right now is very unfavorable for young people. Almost 50% of the world's unemployed people are young people, and those numbers are estimated to get worse. So then the question is, what do we do about this situation? What is the role of a very important and critical institution and movement, really, the unions movement, in ensuring that young people enjoy the rights that they should enjoy, by virtue of them being human beings. So I hope the various unions represented here today take wisdom from the stories that have been shared, that we do have a lot of internal change to make in order for us to go out in society and stand in solidarity, just like we've always stood as unions with other movements, and address the larger societal issues that are faced not only by our paid members or the members of our unions, but as society as a whole. I think that's all I have to say.
So I just want to thank everyone for coming out. I found it a really insightful mechanism for getting people's stories who traditionally would be marginalized. And I very much agree with the comment made by Mugamba that we need to start looking internally as well as externally if we take anything away. So give yourselves a clap and thank you very much.